This is your host, Bharti, and we are here at KubeCon and CloudNativeCon in Barcelona, Spain. And today we have with us Dirk Hohndel. If I recall correctly, last time we met at Seattle KubeCon, and there you talked about your concerns regarding containers. What are your new concerns? What are the things that keep you worried these days?
Yeah, unfortunately, the concern with the content of the container still is not resolved, and I think it's going to be a long time before this is really addressed in a meaningful manner. So that part of people don't understand what they are shipping in the sense of what are the components inside the container binary. That concern continues to be a big one for me. But on the other hand, if you look at the solutions that were demoed here, and if you talk to the developers here, one of the things that I'm noticing is that the software development in the cloud native space seems to slowly move from something that to me feels like an engineering discipline, where there is a lot of deep technical understanding of the details of what's going on, to something that feels much more like a trade, where you simply follow patterns, where there are a few guardrails that tell you roughly what to do and you just follow along. So when you talk to someone in the embedded Linux industry, they care about every byte, about every library, about every component. They know exactly what's there. They have a deep understanding how the code flows through the different components and what is actually running. Versus when you look at the typical solution that is presented here, that is 4, 5, 6 different components, each consisting of several containers, each consisting of, a massive amount of code. And so when you go to the booths and they do a really cool demo, and then you say, so which open source projects were you just demoing? I mean, which projects were included in the software that you just ran? And typically you get a fairly blank look, but then when you try to explain what you're looking for, people generally say, well, I don't know. I just, I use this container, I use that container, and just put them together and they just work. But as a matter of fact, if you want to be security conscious, if you want to be performance conscious, you really want to know what's running. To me, it's important that people have a deep understanding of the software that they're running, because only then can they understand the attack surface that they are exposing to the internet, or the opportunities that they have to be more sustainable, to save energy, to use fewer machines. However you slice it, a better understanding of the code that you're running is always an advantage.
So when we are looking at this, service kind of architecture versus monolith earlier, so do you think that those monoliths are better?
The monolithic architecture that you see in an embedded space is a result of the extreme resource constraints. So they are often better in the utilization of the machine, in being more optimized for the purpose. But of course, they take a lot more time to develop, and there are a lot of other challenges that this methodology brings to you. So the modular approach that we see in modern cloud-native applications, I don't think that is a bad thing. I think that is certainly helping us to create more and more complex and more powerful applications, and to create them quicker than we were able to do this before. I just always think that it's important to take a step back and think about what you're doing, and think about how this affects what you're shipping, how you're interacting with your customers, how you're protecting your customers' data. And I'll give you an example. If you go through the past 18 months and you check every day, was a breach announced today? And I want to say it's more days where someone had to admit that they had a breach. Was it this week when Google said, oops, for our enterprise G Suite customers, for some of them we stored passwords in clear text? It's things like that. And my response to all this is always, so who has done the review of the code that was running, and who thought this was a good idea? And of course, when you then talk to the people involved, it's typically, well, we didn't really quite look at all the components. We really didn't understand what was running there. And that to me is is where I'm saying, hey, maybe we need to take a little bit of a breather and rethink how we architect our applications.
Do you have any playbook, or are you okay? You do point out a lot of problems that are there, but where are the solutions? Because I see these are not technical problems; these seem to be people problem. If I'm not wrong,
they are almost social problems.
Social problem.
They're problems of what is projected, what is assumed to be reasonable behavior in this space, what is assumed to be a good way to do something. And so this is much more a social aspect of the norms in this industry than anything else. So when you ask me if I have playbooks, if I have answers, on a very abstract level, absolutely. So the playbook to go through is, as you assemble your solution, to have a practice of, for each component, doing an architectural review with the red team, with someone who by design is supposed to disagree with you, and to challenge your assumptions. Because as you argue about these assumptions, you will automatically go through the details of your architecture. You will automatically, if you don't know yourself, start asking people who understand this aspect of your microservice architecture, of however you implement this. And that really is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of this critical engagement with your solution and not just click and drag programming.
so that means it also means that to get involved the security community. So it's like DevSecOps.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts about that?
So we had a few great presentations here at the conference that I've seen where people are taking a much more methodological, no, that's not a word.
You can coin a word. I mean,
I just invented a word, yes, where people take a much more careful approach to how they look at the application. So for example, the new SIG security that was just launched a few days ago, that is doing reviews of the CNCF projects and is not necessarily doing a line-by-line code audit, but it's looking at this code flow, at the architecture, at the reasonableness of the assumptions in those projects. And to me, that's a great starting point. That's the kind of initiative that I'm excited about.
The kind of trend that you see, do you feel like satisfied or happy that, people are paying attention, things are getting better, or you're like, no, they're moving in the wrong direction?
Swapnil, there is never an easy answer to that, because you will always find people that you agree with or who agree with you, depending on your perspective, and who are following those same thoughts, those same ideas, going in the same direction as you. And you will always see people at the other end of the spectrum who are running into a different direction. I think overall, this time around, we see a lot more presentations around security. And as I'm talking to people, I see a lot more awareness for the topics that I'm bringing up. And certainly, I have at VMware a team that is looking specifically at what can we do to make this infrastructure more secure? What are tools that we can help develop? How can we contribute to create a safer environment? And one of the things, of course, that all these announcements do is that people talk about, oh, look, this was breached. Oh, look, here somebody was hacked. And as people talk about this, the awareness of these challenges goes up. So am I totally happy with how everyone sees the trade-off between quick, I can get something new out to the market versus let's make sure it's well engineered? It's a trade-off, but I think it's moving in the right direction.
Now let's change the gears for a while and talk about one of the kind of pain that was there with VMware and SFC. I think software conservancy freedom. How do you say that?
I think it's Software Freedom Conservancy.
Exactly, because there are SFLS and there are so many bodies. It becomes hard for me to track, but you have resolved the issue with them.
Technically, it was a lawsuit by Christoph Hellwig, who filed a lawsuit in Germany against VMware, and he lost the appeal. And he has now announced that he is no longer pursuing the lawsuit. And we have announced that we will, in a future version of our vSphere product, no longer ship the VMK Linux module that he was concerned about. So from our perspective, this is a positive outcome. We never wanted the lawsuit, obviously. We have to defend ourselves as a publicly traded company. You have a fiduciary duty to your shareholders to defend yourself as best as you can. But I think the outcome that this is resolved is a very positive one.
But back in those days, VMware did not have you. So now you are there. So how are you ensuring that, because, you have been in the open source world, for so long, you have championed a lot of causes here. So how do you ensure that, nothing like this will happen again? Because sometimes it's not bad intentions, Sometimes, as you earlier mentioned, that you don't even know you're violating something because so how do you ensure that things are like,
Well, I would like to point out that we believe we actually didn't violate the license. So this was done not unintentionally. This was done in an understanding that what we were doing was acceptable under the terms of the license. We simply decided to stop using this code because even if we believe that we are within our rights, the clear position by people in the community was that they didn't like it, and so we respected that and said, okay, let's walk away from it. But in a more general sense, what I'm doing at VMware is I own the compliance process, both inbound and outbound. So my team in the US, in Bulgaria, and India is working on ensuring that as we use open source components, we do so in compliance with the license. We provide the corresponding source where required. We provide the copyright notices. And we also encourage the internal teams to contribute back into the open source projects to be a useful member of the broader open source community. So I do a lot of work, my team does a lot of work inside VMware to ensure that we are treating open source the way I personally feel it should be treated. It's a key part of our innovation. It's something that we're deeply engaged with. It's something that we do because we are engineers.
Right.
And this is a surprisingly easy sell. A lot of engineers inside VMware see this as something that they want to do. And so I think over the last few years, you've seen a massive increase in our footprint in this space. So 2 years ago at KubeCon in Berlin, we had, I believe, a single presentation from a VMware employee. Here we had more than 30. So the way we are participating in this industry, the way we are visible as very active contributors and leaders, I think has changed quite a bit in the last 2 years.
You also acquire, like now VMware is acquiring companies like Heptio or Bitnami, and those companies have done a lot of work in open source space. So how do you ensure that when you integrate those companies, they are bringing their own open source culture and you are building an open source culture within VMware? How do you ensure a smooth integration while you don't compromise with the open source values?
So the acquisition of Bitnami was announced but isn't closed yet, so this is all hypothetical. But obviously Heptio joined us a few months ago. And the way this works is that we from the Open Source Program Office reach out to them to bring them into our processes, to help them follow the rules, how we do open source, simply the mechanics of our internal tooling. And we have, especially in the case of Heptio, we have a great internal relationship where we have teams across the different BUs working together. So it's not just necessarily our cloud native BU where Heptio is and OSPO, but it's even other BUs across the company. We have internal meetings of all the people contributing to the various Kubernetes projects, for example, the various CNCF projects. And what my team does is we are trying to help set best practices, as we talked about earlier. We're trying to help when people have questions on how can we solve this problem? How can we engage with this community? How can we move forward on this conflict over here? And we're trying to be internal advisors to these new employees and to bring them into the larger team, which is the VMware open source community. And we have an internal Slack channel and all the typical communication mechanisms. We have an annual internal open source conference where we bring a lot of people from all over the world together to talk about what we are doing in open source and how we are working together as a large group. It's a lot of fun.
One of your favorite, not topic, but effort that you're making is also diversity.
Yes.
We talked about it last time, where you talked about the efforts you make personally to ensure. What kind of efforts are going on within VMware?
So I'm actually, this is a great topic to bring up. I'm actually helping to create a pilot program for autism at VMware. So we are trying to reach out more to the neurodiverse community and bring not just people with autism, but neurodiverse employees of all flavors into the company and have a bigger pool of candidates for the jobs that we're trying to hire for. And to me, this is yet again a situation where for a number of reasons, for many years, a specific group has had a very hard time being successful in corporate America or in the corporate world. And we're trying to create opportunities for them. And I'm very happy to say that we have done our first few hires, and I'm very happy to see the progress on that topic.
Why did you choose autism? What is the specific reason?
So this is a very complex topic that is very hard to do justice in a quick interview. Autism, or the autism spectrum disorder, is a wide range of people with various degrees of difficulties in interacting with others or in speech and communication and whatnot. But generally, you will find a lot of very, very smart people. And so the problem is that maybe in their social interactions, they're awkward. Maybe it is hard for them to deal with specific situations. Yet on a trying to have them solve a problem, they're extremely successful. Now, if you look around in the broader open source community, you will find quite a few engineers who are on the spectrum. Previously, you might have said they have Asperger's, but that term is no longer used. You would say they have autism spectrum disorder. And quite a few well-known developers have either stated this or at least hinted in that direction, that this is part of the challenges that they face. And so to me, that was a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and something that I felt we should make a difference in the company.
I know a lot of, not developer, but leaders of a lot of open source projects who fall into that spectrum. And one of them I interviewed recently, he stepped down from his project because he just could not handle the onslaught that comes from channels like Twitter. Because these are, I don't know what, these are like Einsteins of their own words, but their strength is not how to deal with people socially. So what happens is that the projects suffer, they suffer. And there is nobody to help them because nobody is there to understand. Sometimes people call them either rude, sometimes people call them arrogant, sometimes people call names, but they don't understand actually what they're going through. So when I sat with him and I talked for an hour, I understood a lot of things. So you are absolutely right about that. And actually I'm happy that, I don't know, how do you find these causes and how do you because, it also takes something to empathize, It's not that easy. So what is that? What do you do that you are able to empathize or see through it?
I think I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on in the world. And so a lot of the causes that I engage in are things that I just notice, where I notice problems, so I notice opportunities. And as an executive in a large company, I have a certain amount of ability to engage on these topics. And so when I have the opportunity, I do. And certainly the topic of autism is something where I have close friends and I have family members of close friends who are on the spectrum. And so I have a lot of personal exposure to this, and therefore I came in with a lot of empathy for that topic.
Well, it's good to know that, when you see you're actually doing something about it. Most people see it, they talk about it, and it's done. So it's really great that you're doing these small changes, and that's what matters, to be honest with you. Not big changes, it's small, and because this small change could be very huge for someone.
I think for the individual, those are very important changes, and we have talked about this in the past. Open source is all about people, and actually a lot more if you look at our industry. this is a people industry. And so to me, it's very important that the leaders in this industry not just look at the bottom line and the success and the amount of code or whatever, the GitHub stars, but you also look at are the individuals doing well? This is the first conference where in a keynote I've seen an announcement of a mental health talk. I think that's incredibly important. Us understanding that humans are complex and that a lot of people go through a lot of issues. I suffer from depression. I am very open about this. Yet in many social environments, that is a taboo topic. That's very hard to talk about. And so I think we need to constantly push what is okay to talk about and open this envelope wider and bring more people in and make them comfortable and create an environment where they can be successful. Because every person is valuable and every person has something to contribute. And you need to find out how to enable them to do so.
Because with open source community, the beauty is that anybody can walk in and contribute. At the same time, it's open community, so it's not very well regulated in a way. So sometimes people, the way interactions happen in some communities. So it's a welcome move, and it's much needed because this is the only criticism left of open source community, that sometimes some community is not that open.
The open source community obviously is very broad and it isn't regulated. And so when I said I'm looking at a project Autism at VMware, this is very much within the company where you have more controls and you have more ability to help people with communication, where you have the ability to shield them from certain things or to ensure that the environment in which they work is aware of maybe some of the limitations or some of the concerns or some of the help that they need. But again, when you talk to neurotypical employees about some of the challenges that neurodiverse employees might have, I have received tremendously positive feedback and a lot of willingness by people to go out of their way to help integrate these into the work environment. So it's been a very positive experience so far.
So Dirk, once again, thanks for sitting and talking to me
My
again.
pleasure.
And we talked about a widest spectrum of topics, and that's why I want to talk to you every single time, because there is always something new that you're doing, and it's not just about technology, as you said, it's about people. So it's incredible to see what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you again in China. So thank you once again.
Thank you. I enjoyed our conversation.